The sun was dying again. It fell down the sky like a tired animal, painting the empty desert orange and red. A man named Samuel stood on his front porch, watching the light fade. His face was hard and weathered, like old leather left out in the rain. His eyes were empty, not angry empty, but the kind of empty that comes when a person has lost everything and stopped counting what was gone. This was his ranch, but it did not feel like his anymore. The land stretched out in all directions, dusty, quiet, and lonely. No cattle moved in the fields. No sounds of laughter came from the house. The barn stood like a skeleton, and the fences were falling down in places where no one bothered to fix them anymore. This had once been a place full of life. Now it was just a place full of ghosts. Samuel had lived here for 40 years. He had built this ranch with his own 2 hands. His wife, Margaret, had planted flowers by the front door. They had laughed together in this house. They had made plans. They had believed that tomorrow would be better than today. But that was before. Before everything broke. Margaret was in the ground now. She had been gone for 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Samuel still counted. She had died of a sickness that came fast and took her faster. He had held her hand while she faded away, and when she was gone, he did not know how to be a man anymore. He was just a shadow walking around, remembering what it felt like to be alive. The neighbors tried to help at first. They brought food and said kind words. But Samuel could see it in their eyes. They thought he should be better by now. They thought he should move on. But moving on felt like betrayal, so he stopped visiting them. He stopped talking. He became the strange old man on the broken ranch at the edge of town. The man everyone felt sorry for. The man everyone wanted to forget. Samuel turned and went inside. The house was dark. He did not light the lamps anymore. He just sat in the darkness and remembered. This was his life now. Sitting, remembering, waiting for something that would never come. The next morning, Samuel heard a sound coming from the barn. It was a small sound, like something crying. He almost ignored it. He ignored most things now. But his feet carried him anyway, moving on their own, remembering how to be useful even when he had forgotten why. In the barn, in the old stall where his horse had given birth weeks ago, something was wrong. The mother horse was standing still, not moving, not looking at anything. And on the ground was a tiny colt, wet and shaking like a leaf in wind. It was trying to stand, but its legs would not work properly. They bent and folded underneath it, like branches that were not strong enough to hold the weight. Samuel knelt down. The colt's ribs were visible through its thin skin. Even newborn, it was small, too small, like it had not received enough from its mother. The colt's eyes were dark and wide and full of fear. It looked at Samuel as if asking, "Why am I here? Why does it hurt?" Samuel reached out his hand slowly. The colt did not run. It did not have the strength to run. Samuel touched the small horse's neck, and he felt the quick heartbeat beneath the skin. Such a small heartbeat. Such a fragile thing. "Easy, little one," Samuel whispered. His voice was strange to his own ears. He had not spoken to anything living in so long. Easy now. He worked through the morning, helping the colt drink from a bucket. The mother horse was sick. He could see that now. She was dying. He had no money for a doctor. He had no money for anything, so he did what he could do. He sat with the colt and made sure it lived through that first day. He made sure it drank. He kept it warm with blankets from the house. By evening, the mother horse was gone. Samuel sat in the dark barn and held the orphan colt against his chest. The small animal trembled, confused and alone. Samuel felt tears on his face, the first tears he had cried since Margaret died. He did not try to stop them. He just sat there, a broken man and a broken colt, both of them lost, both of them wondering if there was any reason to keep going. "You are so small," Samuel said quietly. "And you are all alone. Just like me." The colt made a soft sound, like it understood. Samuel looked at the tiny horse, really looked at it. It was worthless. It was weak. It would probably not survive. The ranchers who came to his ranch and saw this colt would laugh. They would say, "Samuel, that horse is cursed. That horse is no good. You should let it go." They would be right. There was no reason to keep it. There was no reason to try. But Samuel did not let it go. Instead, he carried the colt inside to the house. He made it a bed in the kitchen with old blankets and straw. He fed it from a bottle through the night. When the colt cried, he held it. When it was afraid, he sat beside it. Hour after hour, night after night, Samuel gave everything he had to keeping this small, broken creature alive. And something strange happened. As Samuel cared for the colt, he began to feel something change inside himself. It was small at first, like a single star appearing in a dark sky. When the colt looked at him with those dark eyes, Samuel saw something that needed him. When the colt drank the milk he provided, Samuel felt something like purpose. When the colt would rest its tiny head on his shoulder, Samuel remembered what it felt like to be loved. Days turned into weeks. The colt grew slowly, but it grew. Its legs became stronger. Its ribs were still visible, but less so. Its eyes became bright and intelligent, like it was learning the world and finding it beautiful, despite everything. Samuel began to talk to the colt. He told it stories about Margaret. He told it about the ranch when it was full of life. He told it about his dreams and his failures. The colt listened with its head turned, one ear forward, as if every word mattered. One morning, Samuel caught his reflection in the barn window. He was surprised to see that his face looked different. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Life, light, a reason. Samuel reached down and touched the colt's soft nose. "I will give you a name," he said. "I will call you Hope, because you came to me when I had none left. And maybe, if I can keep you alive, I can learn to stay alive too." The colt nuzzled his hand, and in that moment, both of them understood something true. They were not worthless. They were not cursed. They were exactly where they needed to be.
1 year had passed since the day Samuel found Hope in the barn. The colt was no longer small and helpless. It had grown into a young horse, not large but strong. Its coat was shiny and brown, with a white mark on its forehead like a star. Its legs were straight and powerful now. Its eyes were intelligent and kind. Looking at Hope, no one would ever know that this horse had almost died on the day it was born. But something else had changed too. Samuel had changed. The rancher was not the same broken man who had stood alone on his porch, watching the son die. His face still held sadness that would never leave completely. But there was something else there now. There was purpose. There was a reason to wake up in the morning. There was hope. Every single day began the same way. Samuel would wake before the sun came up. He would walk to the kitchen where Hope slept on the blankets and straw. The young horse would lift its head and make a soft sound of greeting. Samuel would place his hand on Hope's neck and feel the warmth of the animal's body. Then he would whisper the same words he said every morning. "Another day, Hope. We made it through another night." As Hope grew, Samuel moved the horse out to the barn. But he did not move far away. Samuel spent almost every hour with his horse. He would sit on the fence and watch Hope run in the field. He would brush Hope's coat until it gleamed like copper in the sun. He would pick the dirt from Hope's hooves and talk to the horse as if it could understand every single word. And a strange thing was, Hope seemed to understand. Samuel began to teach Hope things, not with whips or harsh commands like other ranchers did. Samuel used kindness. He would offer Hope an apple and lead the horse to follow. He would move slowly and gently and let Hope learn at its own speed. When Hope did something right, Samuel would touch the horse's neck and say, "Good, Hope. Good boy. I am proud of you." Hope wanted to please Samuel. This was not something that needed to be forced. The horse had been loved back to life, and now it loved in return. When Samuel was sad, Hope would rest its head on the man's shoulder. When Samuel walked slowly because his back hurt, Hope would walk slowly beside him. When Samuel sat alone in the barn at night, which he still sometimes did, remembering Margaret, Hope would lie down next to him, offering its warmth. Months became years. Hope learned to let Samuel ride on its back. The first time Samuel climbed on a Hope, the horse was nervous. Its muscles were tight with worry. But Samuel sat calmly and spoke soft words. "Trust me, Hope. I have you. I will never hurt you. We are together, you and I." Hope took a shaky breath and believed. From that day forward, Samuel and Hope moved together as one being. Samuel would ride across the dusty land, and it was like flying without leaving the earth. 2 years passed. 3 years. For years, something strange happened to Samuel's ranch. It began to live again. Samuel started to fix the broken fences. He repaired the barn. He cleaned the house where he had let sadness live for so long. He planted flowers in the front garden, the same kind that Margaret had loved. Neighbors would ride by and be amazed at the changes. The broken ranch was becoming beautiful again. The broken man was becoming whole. But it was not because of the work Samuel did with his hands. It was because of Hope. Word spread through the small town and the surrounding ranches. There was a horse at Samuel's ranch that was not normal. This horse was strong, yes. Its speed was impressive. Its beauty was undeniable. But there was something more. There was something in Hope's eyes that seemed almost human. The horse was intelligent. The horse was loyal. The horse was almost magical. Ranchers began to come to Samuel and ask if they could buy Hope. They offered money, good money. They said, "Samuel, you could start over with this horse. You could sell it and have enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. You could travel. You could rebuild in a way that does not tie you to this land." Samuel would listen politely. Then he would walk to the barn and put his hand on Hope's neck. He would look into those dark, intelligent eyes, and he would remember everything. He would remember the tiny Colt, wet and shaking and afraid. He would remember holding that small, broken creature through the night. He would remember how Hope had saved his life by letting him save Hope's life. "No," Samuel would say to the ranchers. "Hope is not for sale. Hope is my family." One afternoon, when Hope was 5 years old, Samuel rode the horse out to the far edge of his ranch. The land stretched out empty and beautiful. The sky was huge and blue. Samuel stopped and dismounted. He stood beside Hope and looked at the horizon. "Do you know what you did for me?" Samuel asked. "Do you know that you brought me back from death? I was not alive before you. I was just existing, like a ghost walking around in a body that was not really there." Hope turned and nuzzled Samuel's face, as if saying, "You did the same for me." Samuel smiled. It was a real smile, the kind that came from deep inside, from a place that had learned to feel joy again. He climbed back on Hope's back, and together they rode across the dusty land. The old rancher and the young horse, two broken things that had fixed each other, two lonely creatures that had found home in one another. The sun was setting again, just like it did every day. But this time, when Samuel watched it fall down the sky, he did not feel empty. He felt full. He felt loved. He felt like a man who had been given a second life, and he was grateful for every single moment of it. Behind them, as they rode back to the ranch, their shadows merged together on the ground. One shadow, one being, two hearts that beat as one. This was what it meant to be saved. Not by magic, not by luck, but by love. Pure, simple, unbreakable love between a man and his horse. It was a morning like any other morning when Samuel's world fell apart again. The sun was rising over the ranch, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Samuel was in the barn, brushing Hope's coat. The horse had grown into a magnificent animal over the past 5 years. Its muscles were strong and lean. Its coat shone like polished wood. Its eyes held wisdom and kindness that seemed impossible in an animal. This was not just a horse. This was Samuel's heart, walking on 4 legs. Samuel heard the sound of hooves on the dirt road leading to his ranch. He did not think much about it. Visitors came sometimes now. People wanted to see the legendary horse. People wanted to talk to the old rancher who had brought his broken ranch back to life. Samuel had become known in 3 counties as the man with a magical horse. But this visitor was different. Samuel recognized the man as soon as he rode into view. It was Thomas Crawford, the tax official from the city. Samuel's stomach tightened into a knot. He had seen this man once before, years ago, when things were at their worst. Thomas Crawford meant only one thing: trouble. "Samuel," the official called out, dismounting from his horse with stiff movements. He was a thin man with cold eyes and a mouth that never smiled. "I need to speak with you. It is business." Samuel set down the brush and walked out of the barn. Hope followed, pressing close to Samuel's side as if the horse could sense that something was wrong. Samuel's hand found Hope's neck, holding onto the warm, solid presence of his horse. "What business?" Samuel asked, though he already knew. He could feel it in his bones. Bad news was like weather. You could smell it coming before it arrived. Thomas Crawford pulled papers from his saddlebag. Official papers, the kind that meant laws and money and things that could not be changed by kindness or hard work. The official's voice was cold and businesslike as he spoke. "Your land taxes," Crawford said. "You have not paid them for 2 years. The amount owed is substantial. The government has given you more than enough time to settle the debt." Samuel felt his knees go weak. He remembered now. 2 years ago, after Margaret died, he had missed some payments. He had been so lost in grief that he had not even opened the letters. He had pushed them aside, the same way he had pushed aside everything that required him to be strong. "How much?" Samuel whispered. Thomas Crawford named a number that made the world tilt. It was more money than Samuel had ever seen in his entire life. It was more than his ranch was worth. It was impossible, completely impossible. "I cannot pay that," Samuel said quietly. "Then you have 30 days to collect the money," the official replied, his voice flat and final. "If the debt is not paid in full by then, the government will take possession of this land. Everything on it, the house, the barn, the animals, will be sold to cover the debt. You will have nothing." Hope made a low sound, pressing harder against Samuel. The horse could feel the fear that was pouring from the old rancher like sweat. Samuel's hand shook as he touched Hope's neck. 30 days. Samuel heard himself say. "That is not enough time." "That is what the law allows," Crawford said, putting the papers back in his saddlebag. He turned to leave, then paused. He looked at Hope, and for the first time, something flickered in his cold eyes. Recognition, appreciation for the beauty and strength of the horse. "That is a fine animal. The government might make back some of the debt if we sell it separately." Samuel's arm tightened around Hope's neck. Something hot and sharp rose inside his chest. It was not anger. It was something deeper than anger. It was the fierce, desperate love of a man facing the loss of everything that mattered. "No," Samuel said firmly. "You will not take this horse. This horse is not for sale. This horse is my family." Crawford shrugged. "The horse belongs to the land. The land will be seized. The horse will be seized with it. You have 30 days to pay, or you lose everything." The official rode away, leaving Samuel standing in the dust with papers in his shaking hands. The words on the papers meant nothing, but their meaning was clear. In 30 days, he would lose the ranch. In 30 days, he would lose his home. In 30 days, they would take Hope away. Samuel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. He thought he might fall, but Hope was there, solid and real, pressing against him. Samuel dropped to his knees and buried his face in Hope's neck. The horse stood still, accepting the man's pain, offering its presence like medicine. "I'm sorry," Samuel whispered. "I am so sorry. I have failed you. I have failed Margaret. I have failed everything." He stayed there on his knees for a long time, his hands buried in Hope's mane. The horse did not move. It simply stood there, breathing, living, loving the broken man who had saved its life and was now losing everything for it. That night, Samuel sat alone in the barn. He read the papers over and over, hoping the words would change. They did not. The math was simple and cruel. He had no money. He had no way to get money. He had no family. He had no one to turn to. He had nothing except hope, and soon even hope would be gone. Samuel thought about giving up. He thought about simply accepting that this was how his story would end. Twice broken, twice destroyed. He had been given one second chance when hope came into his life. Perhaps that was all a man like him deserved. But then he heard a sound. Hope was moving in its stall. The horse walked over to where Samuel sat in the darkness. The horse's breath was warm against his face. Hope lowered its head and pressed its forehead against Samuel's forehead. The horse held it there, breathing steady and strong. Samuel understood. Hope was not giving up. Hope was saying, without words, what the horse had always known. They were in this together. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Samuel wrapped his arms around Hope's neck. "We will find a way," Samuel whispered into the darkness. "I do not know how, but we will find a way. I will not lose you. I will not lose this. I promise to keep you safe, and I meant it." Hope nickered softly, as if saying, "I know. I believe you." And in that moment, with 30 days until everything was taken away, Samuel made a decision that would change everything. A decision born not from hope or certainty, but from love. Pure, desperate, unbreakable love. He would save the ranch. He would save Hope, or he would die trying. Samuel spent the next 3 days walking through his ranch like a man, saying goodbye to his own life. He walked through the house, touching things. He ran his fingers along the walls that he and Margaret had built together. He stood in the kitchen where Hope had slept as a newborn colt. He climbed the stairs and sat on the bed where his wife had died, remembering how her hand had felt in his, warm, then cold, then gone forever. He had 27 days left. In his mind, Samuel had already accepted that he would lose the ranch. The official had made it clear. 30 days. 30 days to find money that did not exist from a man who had nothing to give. But then Samuel thought about Hope. He thought about the horse standing in the barn, waiting for him, trusting him, believing in him. And Samuel understood that giving up was not an option. On the 4th day, Samuel began to gather things. He pulled down his wife's quilts from the cupboard. Margaret had made them by hand, beautiful pieces with colors that seemed to hold light. She had stitched them for hours, sitting on the porch, dreaming about the future they would have together. Samuel held one to his chest and felt tears come, but he did not let them stop him. He folded each quilt carefully and placed them in a wooden box. From the barn, he took his grandfather's tools. They were old and worn, but they were good. His grandfather had carved them from wood and shaped them from metal with his own hands. Samuel's grandfather had built the original house on this land. These tools had built a home. They had built a life. Samuel wrapped them in cloth and placed them in the box. He gathered the few pieces of furniture that were worth anything. A table his father had made, a chair that had belonged to his mother. He took Margaret's wedding dress from the trunk where it had lain untouched for years. Holding it, Samuel could almost smell her perfume, almost hear her laugh. Everything he was taking represented his past. Everything he was gathering was a memory made solid. But memories did not pay debts. Memories did not keep a man alive. So Samuel was going to sell his memories. He was going to sell his history. He was going to sell pieces of his heart to save the only living thing that mattered anymore. On the 5th day, Samuel brought the wagon around to the front of the house. It was a sturdy wagon, built strong. He loaded everything into it carefully. The quilts, the tools, the furniture, the dress, letters that Margaret had written to him during the years they were courting. A picture of them standing together on their wedding day, both so young, both so full of hope. When the wagon was loaded, Samuel stood looking at it. Everything he owned that had any value was sitting in that wagon. Everything except hope. Everything except the one thing that truly mattered. Samuel walked to the barn. Hope was waiting, as hope always waited. The horse lifted its head when Samuel came in, and its eyes held a question. Samuel approached slowly and placed his hands on either side of Hope's face. He looked into those dark, intelligent eyes and tried to think of words to explain. "I'm going to the city," Samuel said quietly. "I'm going to sell everything I have. I'm going to get enough money to pay the government. And then we will keep this ranch. We will keep our home. We will stay together." Hope breathed warmth into Samuel's face. "But I need you," Samuel continued. "I need you to pull the wagon. The road is far. The journey is hard. It will take 2 days to reach the city. I will not ask you if I had any other choice. But I have no other choice. I need you, Hope. I need your strength. I need your loyalty. I need everything you are." Samuel rested his forehead against Hope's and whispered, Will you help me? Will you do this for us? Hope made a soft sound. Not an A, not quite a nickering, but something that sounded like yes. Something that sounded like agreement. Something that sounded like love. They left at dawn on the 6th day. Samuel had carefully tied the wagon to Hope's harness. He had loaded everything to balance the weight. But as he looked at the young horse harnessed to such a heavy wagon, he felt doubt creep into his heart. Hope was strong, but was Hope strong enough? The roads were long and dangerous. The weather was unpredictable. One horse pulling one wagon for 2 days was not an easy task. If you cannot do this, if it becomes too much, tell me and we will stop, Samuel said, climbing onto the wagon's seat. I did not save your life just to destroy it now. Samuel clicked his tongue, and Hope began to move forward. The first day was difficult but manageable. They traveled through familiar land. Along the road Samuel had ridden with Hope many times before. Hope pulled steadily, never slowing, never complaining. The horse's muscles worked beneath its coat, powerful and determined. Samuel sat on the wagon bench and watched his horse, awed by the strength and loyalty he was witnessing. But on the night of the first day, everything changed. Dark clouds rolled in from the west like an invasion. The wind began to blow hard, pushing against the wagon. Samuel could smell rain coming. Not a gentle rain, but a storm. A terrible storm. He found shelter under some rocks and tried to make Hope comfortable. The horse stood close to him through the night, trembling slightly as wind and thunder tore at the sky above them. The next morning, the rain began. It fell in sheets, heavy and relentless. The road became mud. The wagon wheels sank deeper with every rotation. Hope was soaked to the skin, water streaming from its mane, its coat plastered against its body. The horse's breathing was harder now. Samuel could see the effort it took for Hope to pull the wagon through the mud. We can stop, Samuel said, even though stopping meant not reaching the city, meant losing the ranch, meant losing everything. We can stop, Hope. Your health is more important than money. Your life is more important than this ranch. But Hope did not stop. The horse pushed forward, step by step, hooves sinking in mud, muscles straining against the weight. Hope's eyes held that same fierce, stubborn intelligence that Samuel had seen before. The horse had made a choice. The horse had committed. The horse would not turn back. Hours passed. The rain continued. The road seemed to stretch forever. Samuel found himself crying as he watched Hope struggle forward. Not tears of sadness, but tears of something deeper. Tears of witnessing pure love. Tears of seeing loyalty made flesh. His horse was dying for him, not with anger or resentment, but with grace and determination. I am sorry, Samuel whispered over and over. I am so sorry. I will spend the rest of my life making this right. I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of what you are doing for me. Late on the second day, as the rain was finally clearing and the sun was breaking through the clouds, Samuel saw it. The city, smoke rising from chimneys, buildings in the distance. They had made it. Against all odds, through impossible conditions, Hope had pulled the wagon through. Samuel stopped the wagon and climbed down. He threw his arms around Hope's neck and held on, feeling the horse's exhausted breathing, feeling the rapid heartbeat that had never stopped, never faltered, never questioned. You did it, Samuel whispered. You saved us. You saved me. You saved everything. Hope rested its head on Samuel's shoulder, and together, they waited for the sun to fully rise on their new beginning. The city was loud and crowded and full of strangers. Samuel had only been to the city a few times in his life. He did not like it. The noise hurt his ears. The crowds made him feel small and invisible. The buildings blocked out the sky. But he walked through the streets with purpose, pulling the wagon behind him, with Hope following obediently, still exhausted from the 2-day journey through the rain and mud. People stopped to stare at them. An old man in dusty clothes, leading a tired horse, pulling a wagon full of quilts and furniture and old things. Samuel did not care what they thought. He walked directly to the marketplace, to the shops that bought and sold goods from all over the land. The first shop was run by a woman named Eleanor. She was about Samuel's age, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back from her face. When Samuel showed her Margaret's quilts, Eleanor gasped. These are beautiful, she said, running her fingers over the stitching. These are made with love. You can see it in every stitch. Why are you selling them? Samuel could not explain. He could not tell her about hope, about the ranch, about the way the world had broken him and then given him one more chance. So he simply said, I need the money. Eleanor nodded, as if she understood something deeper than his words. She paid him well for the quilts, more than Samuel expected. She wrapped them carefully and placed them in a box as if they were precious, which they were. Because they were Margaret's hands, frozen in time, preserved in fabric and thread. The next shop was darker, run by a man who cared only about profit. He looked at the grandfather's tools, the furniture, the family treasures, and began to haggle and argue about price. Samuel almost walked away, but then he thought of Hope, standing outside in the street, waiting, trusting. He negotiated with the man until they reached a number that Samuel could accept. All through the day, Samuel sold his history. He sold the table his father had made. He sold the chair from his mother's house. He sold the picture of him and Margaret on their wedding day, though this one hurt so much that his hand shook as he handed it over. He sold his grandfather's old rifle. He sold everything except one thing, the dress Margaret had worn on her wedding day. This he kept. Some memories were too sacred to let go. By evening, Samuel had enough money. Not just enough to pay the government. He had enough with some left over. He stood in the final shop, looking at the pile of coins and bills on the counter, and something broke open inside him. He had sold his past. He had sold his memories. He had sold the pieces of his heart that held his wife and his family and his history. But hope was still alive. The ranch would be saved. The debt would be paid. Samuel walked back into the street where Hope was waiting. The horse had been patient all day, standing tied to a post, not complaining, not moving. When Samuel approached, Hope lifted its head and nickered softly, a sound of greeting, of welcome, of love. Samuel put his arms around Hope's neck and wept. "We did it," he whispered. "We did it, Hope. We saved it all." The ride back took one day because the rain had stopped and the roads were clearing. Samuel rode on Hope's back, light and easy, feeling the horse's strength beneath him. Hope moved with purpose now, as if knowing that they were going home, as if understanding that the hardest part was over. When they crested the final hill and Samuel's ranch came into view, his breath caught in his throat. The house, the barn, the fences he had fixed, the flowers Margaret had loved, now blooming in the garden. It was still there. It was still his. It was still home. Samuel slid from Hope's back and stood looking at his land. The government official was nowhere to be seen. The papers with their terrible numbers were far away. The 30-day deadline was gone, and the ranch remained solid and real, waiting for him to live in it again. That night, Samuel made a fire in the barn. He sat on a wooden bench, his back against the wall, with Hope resting beside him, the horses breathing deep and even. Samuel ran his hand over Hope's neck, feeling the ridge of muscle, the warmth of living flesh. "I sold everything," Samuel said quietly. "I sold the quilts Margaret made. I sold my grandfather's tools. I sold the chair my mother sat in. I sold the picture of us on our wedding day. I sold my entire past, Hope. And I did it for you. I did it for us. I did it so we could stay together." Hope made a soft sound and pressed closer to Samuel. "But you know what?" Samuel continued, his voice growing stronger. "I do not regret a single thing, because memories are not life. Memories are just shadows of what was. You are real. You are alive. You are present. You are more important than anything I could ever own." Samuel looked up at the barn roof, at the stars visible through the cracks in the wood. "Every morning, I will wake up and I will feed you," Samuel promised. "Every evening, I will brush your coat and tell you that you are loved. Every single day, I will remind you that you are not the worthless colt everyone said you were. You're not cursed. You are a miracle. You are my miracle." Hope turned its head and rested it on Samuel's chest, over his heart. Years passed, one after another, like beads on a string. The ranch flourished. Samuel became known throughout 3 counties, not as the broken man, but as the old rancher with the legendary horse. People would come from far away just to see Hope. They would offer incredible amounts of money. Samuel would smile and say the same thing every time. This horse is not for sale. This horse is family. Children grew up hearing stories about the old man and his magical horse. Travelers would speak of seeing them ride across the dusty land, the ancient rancher and the noble horse, moving together as if they shared one soul. Some said the horse understood human speech. Some said the horse had healed the rancher from a sickness of the heart. Some said it was the greatest love story they had ever witnessed. But Samuel never told them the truth. He never explained about the tiny, worthless colt born in a barn. He never spoke about the mother horse that died. He never revealed how he and Hope had saved each other, how two broken things had become whole through love and loyalty. Some secrets belong only to the ones who live them. On the evening of Samuel's 75th birthday, he sat on the porch as the sun was setting. Hope stood beside him, old now, with gray in its mane, but still strong, still faithful, still there. Samuel's hand rested on the horse's neck, and he felt the steady pulse of life beneath his palm. "We did it," Samuel whispered, the same words he had spoken years ago in the city. "We made it, Hope. We stayed together." Hope nickered softly, and the old man smiled. A true smile. A smile that came from a heart that had been broken and healed, that had lost everything and found everything, that had learned what it meant to be loved completely and unconditionally. The sun fell down the sky, painting the world orange and red, the same colors it had painted on the day Samuel first found Hope dying in the barn. So much had changed. So much had been lost. So much had been saved. And as darkness came, Samuel and Hope stood together on the porch, watching the stars appear in the sky. Two souls who had found each other in darkness and brought light into each other's lives. Two broken things that had become whole. Two lonely creatures that had become family. This was what it meant to love. This was what it meant to be loyal. This was what it meant to sacrifice everything for someone you love, and to have that love return with the same fierce, unbreakable dedication. This was the real magic. Not curses or miracles or legends. Just two hearts beating as one, refusing to let each other go, proving every single day that true bonds never die. They only grow stronger with time. The story of Samuel and Hope would be told for generations, but they would never know the real secret. The real secret was so simple, so pure, that it could never be put into words. Love is what saves us. Love is what heals us. Love is what makes us worth saving. And sometimes, when the world seems darkest and most hopeless, all we need is one living thing to believe in us. One voice saying, "You matter. You are worth saving. I will stay with you." That is enough. That has always been enough. The end.